Let's get going. Morning, Petunia.
Morning, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm wonderful, my dear. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a little bit nippy this side of the world in Nelspruit.
So, Petunia, let's get straight into it. You know, I have come to know you because of your passion in battling workplace bullying. Just take me back and tell me about your experience, because you are a very accomplished woman and people would be surprised that you experienced something like this.
Surprised it is. I mean, I was surprised myself, obviously, because when you are a strong personality and you are self-sufficient and used to being handling things, it's difficult for you as an individual to accept that you may not be as equipped to handle a situation as you would think. Because what happens with bullying, it breaks you down. It's a systematic breaking down of your makeup as a person. You know, it breaks down your soul. You lose a piece of you. And when you lose pieces of yourself, you stop recognizing yourself. And that's a very, very scary experience to go through when you are, especially as a cognitive person, when you rely on your brain to do your work, and you are known for your intelligence, and you are known for your outspokenness, and you are known for efficiency. It's a very, very, very trying experience. So where I was employed, I'm trying to find a way of putting my story forward without giving too much detail, because my matter is now in the CCMA and we're about to arbitrate on it. So I have to be careful just how much detail I give. But essentially, for over a period of 2 to 3 years, I experienced systematic bullying in the workplace, where my character as a person was attacked in different ways, to my competence levels, and all really because I stood my ground. You know, as a company secretary, which is what my job was at this particular institution, you are the custodian of ethics and corporate governance. You are accountable for the business doing its work in a responsible fashion, in a lawful fashion. So you have to be a strong character to be in that position, because you guide the institution, you guide the board of directors through doing their work in a responsible and in a lawful manner. And I guess at the time that my personal values and the values of those that were in leadership were not 100% aligned, so that caused friction, and that led to the workplace abuse.
So is this a personality thing, or is this an institution thing? How would you define it best?
It's a culture thing, I think. You know, I've been thinking about that question exactly. Where does it come from? You know, and you have to look at it in the context of a normal case of bullying or abuse, right? When you do that in normal relations, because people can understand abuse or bullying between spouses, for example, or normal relationships, they don't usually assign those labels to a corporate, right? But remember, a corporate employment is a relationship.
Yeah.
It's a relationship between you and an employer. So it's no different to any other relationship. It has its own dynamics, right? And it has its own power play. Now, when an individual within a relationship abuses their power, that's where the trouble comes. Because it's abuse of power, it's usually perpetuated by somebody who's senior than what I would call a victim, right? The person that is suffering the abuse. So the person that is senior then takes advantage of the power that they have, and they abuse it, and they use it in a manner that is negative, in a manner that is demeaning, in the manner that is dismantling to the individual. They use it to alienate the individual as much as possible. And because they're in a position of power, it's usually senior, very senior individuals, right? So we will be talking executives and CEOs and that type of thing. But it could happen at any level where there is a hierarchy, right? But because they're senior, they usually have a number of reportees below them, right? Or people that maybe similar or slightly below. Those individuals will be scared to act, to speak out or to defend, because they do not want to end up like the victim. They don't want to be the ones who have been victimized. They fear to lose their jobs, right? Because employment is about livelihood. And, we've just gone through, we are coming out the stricter levels of COVID-19 at this point in time. And everybody has had to experience what it is not to be able to generate income. Nobody wants to be in that vulnerable situation. So people keep quiet. And some even participate in the bullying in order to protect themselves, because they want to maybe to be the teacher's pet, or they don't want to be seen to be going against the system. So it becomes a culture of the organization. And it comes from pain, because when psychologists talk about abuse in a family or that type of, whether it's sexual or physical, they would usually look at the perpetrator and say the person typically would have undergone similar abuse in the past. So the abused become the abuser, right? It's a cycle, right? And it's the same thing even with the corporate environment. And it's much broader than that with corporate environment, because a corporate involves within a particular system itself, right? And when you look at South Africa, it's not limited to South Africa, but I'm gonna use the context of South Africa here just to illustrate the point. We come from apartheid, right? Where Black people suffered abuse, bullying, discrimination, right? There's a pain and a healing process that comes with that.
Yeah.
In my case, and institutions in South Africa exist in that environment, right? However, corporate bullying is not unique to a racial dynamic. It does not necessarily take place between a white person and a Black person, for example. It can happen Black on Black. And why is that? Because a Black person has suffered pain, right? They say hurt people hurt others.
Yeah.
So as a Black person who suffered pain, who all your entire life, with your identity that has been questioned historically, you are trying to assert yourself, the way that you may assert yourself may not be in a positive manner. And because all you have experienced all your life has been abusive behavior, the only way you know to model how to authority is from an abusive perspective. Again, I'm limiting it here, obviously, to the South African context, and I'm limiting it to an example that is similar to mine, where it's Black on Black bullying, right?
On that point, Petunia, on that point, you have come in contact with other people who've been through this experience through, kind of advocating around the issue. Do you find that a lot of the time it is what we term Black on Black bullying? Because I think that maybe a white person would be more careful because of that discrimination easily being thrown in their face. So do you find that more of this workplace bullying is a Black on Black issue?
There is a lot of that. Remember, as Black people in South Africa, we're in the majority, right? And over time, there's a lot of us that have entered the management levels, whether it's middle management, senior management, executive management. So there's a lot of that, but it happens across race. It happens across the color bar. It happens across gender. It could be male on male, female on female, and same race on same race. It is particularly prevalent with Black on Black, I think, because of just the dynamics, the demographics, that there are a lot more of us. So because there are a lot more of us, there will be a lot more cases. But it does not negate situations where it's also other races, white on white bullying. I have seen it. I'll give an example of a lady, a white lady, PA, exceptionally talented and proficient and all of that, reporting to a Black man who happens to have a political background. Now, you can imagine that relationship, somebody who was an active political activist, right? Who actively fought against apartheid, which was perpetuated by white people and specifically white Afrikaners. Now he has a white Afrikaner woman serving him as a PA. And the interaction between the two, sadly enough to say, is very abusive. Yeah. It's almost like this individual is taking out all his pain of his personal and historical history between the two races on this woman. It's not this woman's fault. She's actually a very good person, and has not displayed any form of, that I have seen, of racist tendencies. She's just a good human being, because there are good human beings across the caliber, right? And there are bad human beings across the caliber. But she's now suffering corporate bullying because she's reporting, and it's within the context of pain. I think corporate bullying, like any other form of abuse, the perpetrators are people that are just in pain deep down.
So let's talk about your pain then, in being the victim. I know that's a term that you're not very fond of, but being the victim, what does that actually mean to you? You say you experience pain. What is it? Mental, emotional? What is it that you went through?
Okay. It was pain at all levels, right? Mentally, emotionally. There was no physical interaction, but when you, the system that you are trying to serve, because when you are reporting to somebody, essentially you are serving that person and the system. And maybe I should provide another context. In my case, it was a situation of, there was a gender bias issue, right? Because I was reporting to a male. The chief bully in this case was male, right? And males, not all males, but we are aware that there are a lot of males that are challenged by intellectually powerful and character, women that have a powerful character, because in their space, in order to be comfortable with who they are, they need to dominate in all areas of their lives, right? And if you are an outspoken, intelligent, strong woman, you challenge that because they cannot control that. If somebody, especially somebody who needs a sense of control, they cannot control it. So this person tried to challenge my work as in the quality of my work. Fortunately, in the environment that I worked in, I had a lot of people that had access to my work and were able to question that and say, but that is not true. What is really your issue with this person? And it boiled down to not being able to assert or exert their persuasive power over me because I'm an independent thinker, right? But what happened is that it made the environment very difficult to work in. And it created fear within the work environment. And when that happens, it affects you mentally because you start, even though you know you're competent, you start questioning your competency, right? Because what could you be doing wrong? Why is this person so relentless in trying to break you down and get you out of the workplace? So you start questioning yourself. Once doubt creeps in one area, it seeps into every other area of your life. Mm. And when you operate from a position of fear and insecurity, it's a very, it is a painful space because you're not comfortable with who you are, right? And when you are constantly, then it brings up fear in you. And when you're constantly in fear, we're not designed to be in fear all the time. We have adrenaline, which kicks our fear instincts for a reason. But when you feel, when your body then has this response that your environment is a threat, a complete threat, all the time, you're constantly on high alert. So you're running a high all the time. Obviously, your body and your resources and your reserves are going to run down. because they're not designed to run at full power all the time at high alert, right? So your mental capacity gets affected. Your emotional capacity, because you lack stability within yourself, because you're questioning everything, and at every possible moment, what you stand for and who you are is getting attacked. It's only natural that you will also start questioning yourself. It breaks you down. For me, how I experience that, I'm a highly intellectual person, right? So I'm very when the doubt crept into my life, I was like, then what's going to happen to me? I identified myself as an individual with the work that I did and my intellectual capacity. It was like the rug was pulled under my feet, because who am I if I'm no longer a highly intelligent, cognitive functioning person? Who am I? It takes you down to that level. So you have to rebuild yourself. In a way, that is a good thing, because we are not one-dimensional beings. And we should never really define ourselves as one-dimensional beings. So this experience, the positive that came out of it, was that it forced me out of that one-dimensional identity space to realize that I'm more than just my brain, and that my brain also, its capability is not only from the academic intellectual perspective. I'm also a creative person. So just because I was not able to deliver on what I've always been delivering, which is the typical academic intellectual self, it did not mean that I lacked mental capacity. I just had to transcend that limited view of myself. So that was the uptake out of this. But it broke me down completely, to the point that if I was not maybe blessed with the resilience and because I'm naturally a positive person, with just that, even when things looked absolutely bleak, I would just tell myself that this too shall pass. I convinced myself that there is no way that I am intended to be existing in this hell for life, because I'm a good person. If we take into the religious sense, I'm a good person. I'm like heaven material, not hell material. So there's no way this could be a permanent environment. So that positivity, that belief that this too shall pass, even though I could not physically see it, and I did not know when that is going to happen, it helped me not to sink below the depths of below, because it gets so lonely in that space and can be so dark that for the first time in my life, I appreciated how it is possible for somebody to take their own life. I myself personally, I never had suicidal thoughts, because I just believe that I am going to transcend this in some way, miraculously, even if that is the case. So that was a fortunate thing. But there are people who succumb to that pain, that it consumes them so much that you become so small, your significance, your sense of what your self-significance becomes so small that you think it would be better that you are no longer in this space. And that space could be in this world. Because people, if you are on a code and people are trying to convince you and everybody else around you that you are nothing, eventually you believe that you are nothing. And for some people, it gets to a point where nothing is, I don't deserve to exist in this world anymore, and they take their own lives. That's how powerful relationships, the impact of relationships can be, whether it's personal or work, but we're talking about the work environment. And it's, in some ways, it's as significant as personal relationships, because we spend most of our lives in a work environment. And if you are at a well-achieved somebody at any level, you spend most of your hours in the day working. So if your work environment is toxic, it's attacking you, it's dismantling all that you had built up within yourself, which is your confidence. that you are a decent person, that you are capable, you can do the work, and all of those positive labels that you may attach yourself, if that is being systematically attacked, pieces of you, those pieces start falling off. Their confidence gets fragmented until there's nothing left for a lot of us. Most of us then decide to...
But now that you have almost come full circle, you've been through it, you've been through the lows of it, you are coming out on the other side, you are still in arbitration, but you have healed as a person from what I'm seeing in front of me today. What is your fresh take on the corporate experience for our viewers today?
So can you repeat the last bit?
What's your fresh take on the corporate experience? Because I'm sure you had an idea in mind when you went into it, and now you've had this experience. So you're going to have a fresh take on it now. And please share that with us this morning.
You know what? Before I had this experience, I knew that there are people that abuse their power. I knew that bullying can take place, right? Bullying takes place even in kindergarten playground. But before my personal experience, I did not appreciate the depths of it. And my fresh take on it is that it's a human rights issue. Because your rights as an individual, your right to be as an individual is attacked through this process, and is attacked through multiple ways, not only personally, but financially. Your financial, your ability to generate income gets affected, because eventually, in most cases, people, it's either they resign or they get fired. In my case, I was dismissed. And you're dismissed under a cloud, right, where your character and your professionalism has been attacked. So your ability to generate income is affected. To get another job, if that's what you want, is affected, right? And it affects families because of that. When money issues, we know that money is a difficult thing, and even in a good relationship, money can cause problems. So in a situation where now an entire family that was relying on a particular individual is no longer has that access to that income, it affects those relationships as well. So it's far-reaching. I think it's a human rights issue, because in the workplace, the employer is required by law to create an environment that is fair, and is required by law to protect that employee. So when the employer who's supposed to protect is the one who is attacking the employee, that employee's rights to be their employee and to be a person is being attacked. So I would say, to me, my view is that workplace or corporate bullying is a human rights issue.
Thank you,
The
Petunia.
same way that, thank you. The same way that sexual abuse is a human rights issue, or gender-based violence is a human rights issue, corporate bullying is a human rights issue, and we need to start looking at it from that perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to have this conversation, because we need to have these conversations to not only shed a light on this issue, but to unpack it so people understand.
And we'll do more of that with you. We really will. We'll catch up with you, Petunia,
especially after
everything's done and dusted, and we'll find out where you are. Thank you.
Fantastic.